Thank you, Helga, very, very much. And I just want to say that actually Helga was also here yesterday, and we had a very, very excellent seminar in the Russian House, together with mostly for the embassies, but also some industrial people, other Danish institutional people, where it actually came out that there was an excellent discussion. Helga gave a brilliant presentation. Then we also had the Russian embassy, the Chinese embassy, the South African embassy, the Brazilian embassy present, which each then also, well, the first three anyway, gave a short presentation, Brazil later participating in discussion, on how can we actually make this shift, not in 10 years from now, but what can each of us do today in order to make this transformation possible. And the seminar was excellent because all of those diplomats participating actually left with a very firm commitment that this is also something they have to take responsibility for, because it is so, there's so much in the balance that the question is not academic. The question is, like Helga started out with, personal. What can I do to make sure this transformation takes place? So we open up for discussions, and I will just ask you therefore also to reflect on that, like Helga said yesterday, don't walk out of the room and then afterwards think, oh, I can't really do anything because I had this other thing I'm not quite clear on. Ask questions from the standpoint of what is it you need to have clarified in order for you to go out and transform the world outside. Because that's what we have to do. So, yes?
Just before we start the questions, we have already discussed having another conference in a month or a month and a half. So this is just a jumping off point. And we will have the next meeting at our office on Thursday in 1.5 weeks, right? Okay.
And I assume that people should speak in the microphone, or does it matter?
Not obligatory, maybe. Can I ask you?
And if possible, maybe you can also introduce yourself, just say where you're from if it's relevant.
Okay. I'm Natalia Seim. I'm from Sweden now, but originally I'm from Russia, from Moscow. So I'm follow also what's happening now, and I'm also very anxious about possible nuclear war. This is really a very serious situation. My question is about Merkel, actually, because to my mind, this lady is wrong in her politics, and also Merkel, Angela Merkel. Yeah. So, what do you think? Because I like what you presented here. Really, this transformation, these proposals. Yes, this is great, and this is the way to peace in the world. But what's Merkel is doing, to my mind, as I can understand her, she plays some other game. What do you think about it?
Well, there is actually in the whole world a big question, you know, what is the reason why Merkel is doing what she's doing? I have been asked that question a lot, especially since she gave this terrible speech in Sydney in Australia, where she basically said Russia is the aggressor, and ever since she is on this complete confrontation line. You know, she's being praised in Washington right now as the strong, you know, ally of the United States. And, you know, people ask me, you know, maybe the NSA did find something in her mobile to blackmail her.
Yeah, she's hooked by CIA.
I have no idea. I mean, it is a disgrace And I think she will fail. I mean, I think the whole...
Next election, you mean?
No, in the short term. Because, you know, to have this confrontation with Greece right now is really stupid. You know, because, I mean, look, what are the options? I mean, I think that if the EU is in Merkel, if they are pushing Greece against the wall, then, you know, the Russian finance minister already has offered that Russia will help Greece, also with a credit. China has already a good relationship with Greece. So I think they will just push Greece out of the euro, and then, you know, they will have a big signal effect for Spain. There's already a big rally by Podemos. I think they are today having a rally with 260 buses. I forgot where exactly, but there is a big reaction everywhere. And also in France, a lot of people, France is sort of halfway trying to make compromises with Merkel, but halfway supporting Greece. So, you know, a lot of people in France, the old Gaullist, the old communists, they do not agree with this London. It's really Cameron who has Merkel in his pocket. You know, so I think that the reaction will be either that they push Greece out of the euro, then it will have a follow reaction in many other countries, or if they just I mean, the only way how they could come out of it is to agree to a European debt conference, not just for Greece, but for all of Europe. You know, and that will come very quickly. I mean, obviously they are now making blackmail and say that end of February Greece will run out of money because then they will not give the next EU tranche of promised money. So I think we are in a short-term showdown. You know, but it's all occurring in the context of the collapse of the financial system. So, you know, some of the ministers in the new Greek government are familiar with Glass-Steagall. They already have endorsed it. The new defense minister, Komnenos, spoke at our last Schiller Institute conference in Frankfurt. We have good contacts to many other of the new government. So I think we are trying to tell them the only way is Greece must become the bridge for joining the Eurasian land bridge, the BRICS countries. And, you know, it's not, all the Balkans is already moving in this direction because the Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang was last year in Budapest and had a conference with 16 heads of state of Central and Eastern Europe. And they discussed that China will help to build a fast train system in the Balkans, in Central Europe, in Eastern Europe. The EU is not offering that. But China is coming, and they have the best fast trains in the world by now. You know, if you ever go to China, take the train from Beijing to Shanghai. It's a pleasure. First of all, this train goes 310 kilometers quick. It's built by Chinese engineers, so it's a Chinese, you know, technology, and it goes like totally quiet. It doesn't go like that with an ICE. You know, I mean, if you go in Germany with an ICE, if you are unhappy, you cannot drink a glass without you know. But in China, you can have a glass full, you know, completely to the rim, and no drop will jump out because it goes like a Zeus.
Which technology do they use in China? Which when? Which technology? Their own.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And they also have the only functioning maglev from Pudong to Shanghai. Germany was too stupid to build, so Chinese is now building it. China will have, I think, by the year 2020, 18,000 kilometer fast train. And they just decided to build a fast train between Moscow and Beijing.
Yeah, I heard they have a very good now technologies. I just wanted to confirm. But my question is about about Merkel. How can you influence?
But I mean, our theme.
I think this goes to chaos. Her politics just making things worse all the time. Yeah, because she's like marionette.
Well, I think we should find a replacement for her, you know. And the way to do it is we encircle Germany. Right now, Germany is the most occupied country on the planet. That's unfortunately. I'm a German patriot.
Okay.
You know, not only I'm also a virgin citizen.
You are conscious about it.
No, it hurts me very much to say this, but right now Germany is the most stupid and most arrogant country in the world. It really hurts me to say this, but you know, people are just so the slaves of a war policy, which is against German interest. If it comes to this war, Germany will be cannon fodder. We have a modernization of nuclear weapons going on in Germany right now. There is no good reason for that. You know, Obama, when he came into office in 2009, promised that the dismantling of nuclear arsenals would be his prime concern. So why is the United States then modernizing its global nuclear arsenal? Why are they building a global missile defense system which everybody on the other side is regarding as an offensive system? And Germany, by being the foot soldiers of this, make themselves a target. It's very stupid. So what we are trying to do in Germany is the same thing like here. We have conferences. We use the petition. The petition is a very good means to call up people. You can take this petition and you call up anybody and you say, look, we have this petition drive. You heard the people concerned about the war danger. We want a paradigm shift. We want that Europe joins with the BRICS countries to build the world land bridge. Which is in the interest of, look who signed already, please sign. And that way we make people familiar. Because I tell you, because the mass media in Europe, they do not report about this. When there are articles about China, you read about human rights violations. Now, I have made the point that China is the country which has done more for human rights than any other country. For the very simple reason, if you elevate 5 or 7 or 800 million people out of poverty to have a good living standard, that is the best you can do for human rights, because poverty is a human rights violation. If you are poor, you die early. You have no house, you have no food, you have no sanitation, and it makes your life miserable. And I happen to have been in China in 1971. I retrospectively, this was a very clever thing for me to do. No, I'm really not kidding, because I'm probably one of the few people of the West who visited China during the Cultural Revolution. And China was a very unhappy place at that time. The people were unhappy, they were scared. They were crying many times because the Red Guards would come, kidnap people from their house. The few skilled people would be sent to the countryside. It was just a bad period. Therefore, I can probably judge better than many people what an enormous development China has made. China has, in 30 years, the last 30 years, done an economic development what Europe and the United States needed 200 years, in 30 years. If you go today to Shanghai, I went to Shanghai in February last year to give some presentations to various institutions. And I wanted to go to the place I was 42 years earlier, and I couldn't find any place. I couldn't find it because everything was completely changed. I went to the famous Bund, which is on the riverside, and finally I recognized 3 old colonial houses. I said, yeah, maybe that's how it looked. But now it's a big center of industry, of unbelievable development. And, everywhere you go, when you go, the Chinese are building, they're not so, in Germany, when you build a railway, it takes you 10 years from Cologne to Frankfurt, and then it doesn't function. No, the ICE didn't function. In China, they built the maglev train in 22 months from Pudong to Shanghai, and over a swamp area, where new Chinese patents had to be developed. And it's just a completely, they're building now, or they have already built the railroad from Lanzhou, Dunhuang, Urumqi. And I had the luck to be invited there for a tour last August. This was an invitation by a foundation in China to show international scholars, the old Silk Road, people who are interested in the new Silk Road, to visit the old Silk Road. And it was so funny because we were driving through the desert Gobi with a bus, and then I saw these little arcs. In the desert you see these little arcs, one arc after the other. I said, what the hell is this? And then I said, oh yeah, this is the foundation for the coming train. But they're building it simultaneously everywhere. So here you have already a bridge, and there you have only these arcs, but it goes more quickly this way. Because if you build the foundation already, now, and then it goes much faster. And China has now the best fast train system in the world. They have the largest hydropower dam, the Three Gorges Dam, which is saving hundreds and thousands of people from floods every year. They have developed an enormous potential in terms of, really transforming the country to a level, it's a completely new idea. And, in a certain sense, it's not different than what Germany used to do after the Second World War. Germany and China are probably the two countries which have done economic miracles. And the new Silk Road is simply the idea, to extend that model and have everybody join who wants to be part of it. And Africans are very happy. Li Keqiang went to Africa last year, and he offered that China would connect all the African capitals through a fast train system. Now that's exactly what Africa needs. You need infrastructure, because if you don't have basic infrastructure, you don't have agriculture, you don't have industry, and the EU, they go to Africa and say, you have to follow human rights, and you have to reduce your living standard, and you have to pay your debt, and other sermons like that. So the Africans are much more happy with the Chinese, because the Chinese say, okay, we want treaties, raw material versus infrastructure. And the Africans say, we like a business deal better than a Sunday sermon which comes along with hunger.
Yes?
Just
bit of general announcement. For those who are young or who considers to be young, you have special mission to carry out our Shilla Institute revolution by creating new Renaissance. What is a new culture that will represent this kind of idea of men? So tomorrow we will have a special session for young people to come and learn ideas from geniuses of people who created Renaissance, Greeks, a Greek civilization, and so forth. So after this, let's get together around that piano over there. But we should continue this question and answer session. But this is for general announcement.
Yes, questions? We have plenty of time.
What? One comment? Yeah. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I have been very impressed with your this lecture and thought a lot about, of course, what has been said, and of course, this what must be a longer-term plan. This BRICS, Europe, US, which is, of course, very. That must be the right way, and it must be the way to go from geopolitics to a geobalance, one could say. And one could also, of course, think, how do we get the US and the European with? Because they have to sell it to the electorate. That's the problem with politics. They have to sell it to the electorate. They have some excuse for doing this. And the more that goes for, the more short-run challenge, that means the Ukrainian crisis. How can we find out some good reasons and good reasons for the actors, that mean the main actors, that is Obama and Merkel and of course Cameron, but that would be probably impossible to convince him. But if you can convince Obama and Merkel, how do we do that, and how do they sell it to their electorate?
Well, I think that in the same way, like many people realize that we are on the verge of World War III. I mentioned Gorbachev, but for example, the German-Russian coordinator for Russian policy, Gernot Erler, was asked recently at a public event what he thought about the danger of the Ukraine crisis getting to a large war. And he said, if there is an effort to try to solve it militarily, I see that the Gorbachev scenario could happen. Then you have other people like Postol, I mentioned already, who was a nuclear expert in the United States. He wrote another article in the Boston Globe last week. Then you had the former senators Lugar and Nunn, who warned of the same thing. You had the former Russian foreign minister Igor Ivanov, who just wrote an article where he said that he thinks that that the situation is really completely out of control. Then you had the former General Chief of Staff of Russia, Baluyevsky. No, Baluyevsky. He said that he thinks that the entire policy of NATO and the United States is oriented towards a first strike, and that he thinks it cannot be stopped anymore. I mean, you have a lot of people, you know, if you are attentive and you watch for who speaks on, you realize that there are many people right now who realize it. And just now, the former head of the Council of Foreign Relations for 10 years, from 93 to 2003, Leslie Gelb, just wrote an article, or two actually, where he said that the entire national security team of Obama must be kicked out. Susan Rice, Samantha Powers, Valerie Jarrett, Ben Rhodes, anyway, this group, these are all people with whom Obama has surrounded himself, who are interventionists. You know, these are the people who say we must intervene militarily in Syria, in Ukraine, you know, as compared to people who say, no, we have to have diplomacy or we have to respect for sovereignty. This is the school, the Blair school. You know, Blair, who said we have to have human rights interventions on the globe, and you know, you can make. I mean, this is Blair should be in front of a Nuremberg tribunal for for having created, I don't know how many million Iraqis have been killed on the basis of the lies he produced. And the fact that Blair is still running around, and he was just in the United States advising the Republican Party. It's a complete scandal. Bush and Blair have been condemned by a trial in Malaysia for war crimes. And if they ever travel to Malaysia, they will be arrested. So, but my husband, Mr. LaRouche, basically said it's not enough to kick out the national security team of Obama, you have to kick out Obama. No, it's not impossible. Right now, I can tell you there are several groupings in the United States, the Panetta group, the Clinton group, and even some Republicans who are freaked out about what is happening. Because America is not a unilateral, homogeneous country. The problem is the Europeans have forgotten that there is a positive America, because Bush Senior, 2 Bush Junior administration, 6.5 years Obama, where this war policy has been escalating. So people are very anti-American, but not all Americans are like that. There are even Americans who think that it is in the interest of America to cooperate with the BRICS. And what we are trying to do with our petition, we are looking, who is somebody who is reasonable, who can we approach? And I really want to ask all of you to help. You should make a list of people who in Scandinavia we should contact and talk to about the BRICS conception. Because we can only do so much. We need a lot of people, and we need something else. We need a mass movement for development. Because Narendra Modi, who is, he in his own right is as outstanding as Xi Jinping, or Putin for that matter. You have right now the fortune that some of these BRICS leaders are really leaders, not like these European vessels, No, Narendra Modi is by the Indian people regarded as on the same level like Mahatma Gandhi or Jawaharlal Nehru, and he has made speeches which you should absolutely, what you should do, you should read the speeches of Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi. Don't believe me, go and read these speeches, and you will see that these people have a completely different philosophy. Modi, for example, said that he wants to build 100 new cities in India. He wants to create 1 million jobs for young people every month. He has just revived a 30-year-old water management project which will connect all rivers of India through a system of channels which will tame the waters which come down from the Himalaya and normally flood Bangladesh and other places and cause millions of people or thousands of people to die. And that water will then be used for power, for irrigation, and basically an enormous amount of agricultural land will be made usable. And he has also said that the BRICS countries are the first alliance of countries which are defined by the future potential and not what it is right now. And he also said that the big advantage of India is that I think 60% of all people are under 30 years of age. And that is a big advantage because if you now educate these people, then you can export skilled labor to all countries which have demographic problems. Which for Germany is very good, and for Italy as well, because Italy, despite the fact that it's a Catholic country, is evaporating. They don't have children any longer. Modi is really somebody. He came to New York and gave a speech in the Madison Square Garden, and he there were 20,000 Indians living in New York, but they're still Indians. So he said, India had just launched the first Mars orbiter, at the first effort. Normally when countries try to go to Mars, they have one experiment, another experiment. India launched the first orbiter and was successful in putting it in the orbit. And then Modi said, well, when you take a rickshaw in New Delhi, you have to pay for 1 kilometer 10 rupees. But if you go with this orbiter to Mars, you only have to pay 7 rupees per kilometer. And, this was making fun because India built this space project with only 10% of the cost of a similar project of NASA. Which shows India has a tremendous genuity of creativity. They have one of the best laser machines. Naturally, they are IT specialists, that's known, but they have a real true creative potential. This is something I should have mentioned, One thing which unites all of these people is, and what makes them really different than, let's say, Merkel, Renzi, Cameron, all of these people. For example, Xi Jinping is naturally a communist, but communist with Chinese characteristics, which is always something special. But much more than that, he is a Confucianist. And all Chinese are Confucian because they have Confucian philosophy in their genes. They're born with Confucian ideas already. It's the state philosophy since 2,500 years. And if you look at the principles of Confucius, it's very similar to the Christian Platonic classical tradition in Europe. Because Confucius, who basically was a scholar and philosopher after the warrior period, which was a period where China was in great turmoil and so forth. So therefore, he had very much the idea of building a harmonious world, and harmony is very important for the Chinese thinking. Harmonious development meaning also to have a cosmic order implemented on the planet. For example, the notion of Ren, which is the equivalent of agape in Christianity, or similar, the idea that the common good and well-being must be the basis of policy. The notion of Li, that every person must have its place or his place, her place, and fulfill that in the best possible way. So when you have talents, you must use these talents for the common good, and then there will be no problem. If everybody develops, it will be harmonious. And that is very much like Nicolaus of Cues, who said the development of the macrocosm requires the maximum development of the microcosms. And each microcosm has to have the interest of the other microcosm and vice versa. And that is Xi Jinping's win-win conception in modern language, So I think we have to really, and also, I think Modi has very much of the Indian Gupta Vedic tradition, the new Indian Renaissance. People are really much more, how should I say, enlightened. I don't want to use, because enlightenment was not such a great period, but they are much more, I don't know, I have to find a good word, but they're much more oriented towards the future, towards the common good of the people, towards the interest of humanity than these people here. And, I think what we can learn from Modi also is he called for a mass movement for development. He said, I want the young people to organize a mass movement and fight for development. This is like a change of what Mahatma Gandhi had said, who wanted a mass movement for peace and independence. And Modi changed that into a mass movement for development. And we need in Europe a mass movement for development. Because people are not excitable anymore. It's terrible, you know. But Europe is about to die. If we don't change our ways, you know, we will not make it. So we better change.
We could also use peace and independence.
Hi, my name is Lena Malki. I'm Swedish and I'm living in Malmö. Well, you said that the European, they were not excitable anymore, and and that's true in many ways. And one could ask oneself the question, why is the European a little bit passive? And I think that if you look at least in Scandinavia, you have you're frightened. You're frightened of being, how do you say, outside the frame, outside the cube, outside the political correctness. But at the same time, you're aware of that there is not a huge future for your children or for optimism. So people turn to materialism and to as they say today, carpe diem. But carpe diem is not what it could be. That you really develop your talents and discover beauty, and that you're happy. Carpe diem is more just the pleasure of either material or physical pleasure, and so Europe really needs to be shaken into the ground with optimism and beauty and rediscover life, really.
Well, I think one of the best ways of getting a taste is travel to China. I mean, I'm really serious, because, you know, I was last year 2 times in China, and I met a lot of people, and they were just happy. You know, they're just content. You know, and for me, the best measurement if a government is good or bad is what is the mood and the condition of the people. You know, when the people are unhappy, the government is bad. So the German government is very bad. And you know, in China, I just found that, you know, every time I went to China in the last, you know, 42 years, people were more happy, more optimistic. For example, they say, okay, now we have already developed about 2/3 of all of China into a modern living standard. Now we will go and uplift the living standard of those who are still in the rural areas and poor. But they're optimistic that they can accomplish it. And they're also optimistic that the Chinese model of development can be replicated everywhere. And the new Silk Road is the idea. Central Asia, Africa, they can just do the same thing what the Chinese did. And Germany could have done that, but they didn't, you know. And I think the problem in Europe is the EU, because we are sitting under this control of a supranational bureaucracy. The reason why people have the feeling they can't do anything anyway is because it doesn't really matter what government you are electing in Denmark, because the laws are made in Brussels, and Brussels makes a policy which is entirely in the interest of the banks, you know. And that gives people a feeling of impotence, of there is nothing you can do, you know, and it's an oligarchy. And I think the best thing people should do is, for example, all the businessmen who have export, import, or trade with China, they all say that what the Western media is saying about China is not true. You know, and that is an experience. I think the best thing is people make themselves. So rather than going to Mallorca or some other crazy place, travel to China and look for yourself. I made already a speech in 2001 about the Silk Road in Washington. I said, the title of the speech was "Why Americans Should Go There." You know, making a pun. You know, I don't go there. That I don't let this get to me, you know. So I said, why Americans should go. For example, China is now graduating 2,000 students in fusion power. Many students from Africa, from the Middle East, from elsewhere, who want to study fusion power, do they go to Germany? No, they go to China. Because the German Merkel stupid policy has ruined even the studying of nuclear technology. They also don't go to the United States because the same problem. And I think that between India and China, you have two large countries which are really, really optimistic. Russia is a little bit more difficult because the Russians naturally are, you know, they feel that the entire attack is directed against them, and therefore it's much harder for them to have the same kind of joy, you know. But I think that...
Yeah, because it's a little bit different vector of development, because Russia came down so much and then it was on the bottom, now it goes up. And it's still a big difficulties inside Russia, around also, because of this base around, yeah. But completely different for China. China really goes up.
But I think the efforts by the West to divide the BRICS, you know, and say, you know, they have these tensions, that's all psychological warfare. I think on the level of Putin, Xi Jinping, Modi, Rousseff, they stick together. I think that can never be divided again. And they're targeting Russia because, you know, they think that they have now a flank which can destroy the entire BRICS. So I think that the other BRICS countries probably understand that more and more, that they have to help Russia, you know, because of this, you know, because if you destroy Russia, it's also an attack against the BRICS.
It's not in China's interests.
Yes, my name is Nina.
My name is Nina, and I'm just a single person standing here in the universe. I think the interesting point here is what you asked for, new public movements, how to create that. And I was just thinking, what kind of name should this new public movement work under? Because it's been said for many years that we need new public movement to support the new good ideas so we don't go off the cliff. And so I'm just thinking, what's the hat? What's the name of it? Because personally I've been thinking about that I would like to make a website that organizes all consumer organizations of the world. So consumer groups could very, very quickly communicate and say, okay, we want Coca-Cola to pay taxes, so we boycott cola until they pay tax everywhere they work, and let their employers have workers' rights. So I personally have bought domain names to sort of organize consumer groups, and this is my project in my old age to do that. But I think it's so interesting in this connection because it's we have to move now, and as people say here, we've given up. Where should we go? We don't have any power. It just gets lost in the EU. The Danish government just sold the power to Goldman Sachs, yes. And we're just watching that, and they put it into this tax mill, taking all the money out, and the Danish government does that all the time. They've done it 3 times in a row. So if anybody has a name for the new movement, let's start walking, man.
Well, one idea would be to call it the new Silk Road becomes the World Land Bridge. You know, because that has both the idea of the Silk Road, which, you know, as it's a synonym or a metaphor for this kind of communication or collaboration of different nations. And the World Land Bridge is the idea of the future, so it's the transformation of the Silk Road into the World Land Bridge as a bridge to the future.
It's a lovely idea, but I think it's so complicated. So it needs like a global positive, because we've been so much told that globalization is a threat to Europe, and we have to compete with Chinese wages, and Europe is going to lose in the globalization, and the industries go out of the countries and this. So, but I agree, I think it's fantastic, I'm completely blown away, but it's not an easy concept to sell in a sort of a public movement thing, is it? Or is it maybe?
Well, I think that unfortunately, when you try to package a difficult concept into a populist slogan, it doesn't function. You know, because I was asked many times, you know, my husband is, as I said already, the best economist, at least of the Western world. And he's also a genius, you know, he has written many fantastic conceptions. And I was asked many times, can you not make it more simple? I was even asked by some rappers, you know, to translate his theoretical writings into rap. And I said, unfortunately, it doesn't function. You know, I think that what we have, maybe we call it the new Silk Road movement. Maybe that's shorter and, you know.
It's a lovely phrase.
I think the new Silk Road movement is actually not a bad idea at all. I love the word Silk Road because it is something which you know, inspires the imagination. So maybe we should test that, huh? The new Silk Road movement.
My name is Hedvig, and I'm also here as a person in universe. I'm here now to react on your suggestion about taxing Coca-Cola worldwide. I think what we should work for is to ban Coca-Cola for everything except for cleaning toilets. And it's really unhealthy. And I think that's we should, at least in the case of Coca-Cola, it might be a good idea to inform people about the bad consequences of consuming Coca-Cola. And never mind about the tax.
Well, I must admit, I like Coca-Cola. I don't like the fact they don't pay taxes, but as a side of the point, I have some questions because you're from Germany, obviously, and I admire the Germans, hardworking people, and they have order. You know, like what you call the bureaucracy is also order. And I don't know if you have heard the tale about the ant and the grasshopper. You know that one. You got the ants. They're building the ant heap. You know, they're all working all day long, all night long, and the grasshopper is just like singing, playing his fiddle. You know, just having fun. Then winter comes, and the grasshopper is sad because he's cold, and the ants are feeling good. So now you have Germany. They went to bed early. They ate good food. They didn't go out on the bender and eat burgers and drink beer all night. And now Greece woke up. They have a big freaking hangover. And the German people might say, why should we cut them slack? Why should that go unpunished? How would you sell that message? I know that of course the whole concept of the euro is silly. You can't have Greek economy that survived by inflating their currency to meet the market demands. So you'd postpone your stuff, and the Deutschmark was always strong, and they said it is strong, It is the same as the Chinese are doing. You know, Obama said, please, you know, do something with yuan. You have to make it more expensive. And the Chinese said, well, Obama, no. Because they have the power to do that now. But how do you say that, how would you sell the idea to the German people that we should see, you know, show some leniency, show some mercy and compassion when they've been working their butts off and really restraining themselves during a financial boom bubbling out? The other thing I want to ask, I'm sorry, this is two-parter and this is another spectrum. I heard that the Russian and the Chinese and the countries between, they were talking about having trade unions where they would trade in local currency. And one of the reasons why the dollar is still strong, in spite of the quantitative easing, is that it is a trade currency. If that fact changes, well, the US are in a pretty bad situation. And we all saw what happened to Gaddafi and Saddam Hussein, who they wanted to trade in euros with the oil, and well, it didn't go that well. I'm sorry. In Libya, it was gold, but still, they don't exist anymore.
So, what was the second question?
The second, oh yeah, is there a relation, you think, with you know, the whole currency thing and Russia being pressured so much? Because I think that Russia were pressured into doing what they did, and I think that we misunderstand what the role should be in the Ukraine. I think we should accept that for now it is a buffer nation, and we should allow the Ukrainians to benefit from both sides. I think it would be better for everything. And if you want to go to mathematics and science, you have John Nash, who said you should do what is best for you and everybody else at the same time. You can't just think about one of them.
Well, on the first question, I think that if you look at the reality rather than the propaganda, you know, the German people have not profited from the euro. I think it's one of the big mythologies that Germany is the profiteur of the euro and the hard work.
I think they paid quite dearly for it.
Oh, yeah, they do. No, but let me just finish my sentence.
I don't think they profit from it, so.
No. And I think that the key to understand is that, I mean, look, if you take it back, how did the euro come into being? When the wall came down, the German unification came, everybody knew that it was not possible to have a European currency union without a political union. Kohl said it, many people said it. And, you know, then, because the neocons in the United States rejected any idea to, you know, what we proposed they hated the most, but they wanted to develop, to transform Russia from a superpower into a raw material exporting third world countries for geopolitical reasons. There was a CIA study which was published in some German newspapers in '91, which said that if we allow Russia to economically develop, then we will groom a competitor on the world market which we cannot defeat, because Russia has more raw materials and it has more skilled labor than the West. Therefore, let's bring Russia down through the shock therapy, and they did. Jeffrey Sachs and other such people prescribed the shock therapy, and the industrial capacity of Russia was reduced from 91 to 94 down to 30%. So that was their plan, and they wanted to prevent Germany from having a special relationship with Russia, which would have undone that. And there were historical parallels. For example, when the Versailles Treaty, which was designed to keep Germany down for eternity.
Hence the Marshall Help.
No, I'm talking about this post-Versailles Treaty, when the Rapallo Treaty was concluded by Walter Rathenau. This was the effort to have the special relationship between Russia and Germany as a motor to get Germany out of the crisis and also help Russia. And then within 1 year, everybody who had signed the Rapallo Treaty was killed. And also the relationship between Germany and Russia goes back, way back, between Peter the Great and the Bergbau Academy and then Leibniz. I mean, it has a long history. The whole defeat of Napoleon was done with the help of the Prussian reformers, helping the general staff of Russia to defeat Napoleon. So there is a long history where Russia and Germany had very, very deep relations. And they wanted to make sure that that tradition would not come into play. So when the wall came down on the 28th of November, Helmut Kohl wrote the 10-point program, which was not yet a proposal for unification, but it was just the idea of having 2 German states as a federation. 2 days later, Alfred Herrhausen was assassinated. And, this was one of these murders which completely changed the paradigm and was a warning against Kohl not to go in this direction. And then Mitterrand put blackmail on Kohl, saying, you have to give up the Deutschmark as a price, or otherwise we do not agree for unification. And this was the first EU summit in Strasbourg in December '89. And then there was really a complete pressure, on Germany to give up the D-Mark. And Thatcher, Bush Senior, Mitterrand, they all ganged up on Kohl and forced Kohl to accept the euro, which was against German interest, and it was deliberately designed to contain Germany in the straitjacket of the EU. So the EU was more a political instrument than an economic instrument. It was meant to contain Germany. We have documented it. I even commissioned a book about it, which you can read. It's called The Lost Chance of '89. And, so therefore we wrote at that time, that the euro could not function because the European countries were not an optimal currency zone, because you cannot put high-level industries together with agrarian countries like Greece and Portugal. So you had for 10 years a boom, but the boom was a bubble, a real estate bubble. You have still in Spain, you have 1 million empty houses, which are the result of this real estate tourism bubble. You had a bubble in the periphery, and you had stagnation in the center in Germany. Germany did not profit. When I'm talking about Germany, I'm talking about the German people, the German living standard. I'm not talking about the DAX 500 and the banks. The banks obviously made profit. But once the people understand that this whole construct is a construct for the financial oligarchy and not the people, the German people and the Greek people have been equally the victim of it. And once they understand that, then we are free for the alternative. Now, on the question of Russia, I think what Putin said in his New Year's address was absolutely identical with what I know to be true, namely that the aim is the destruction of the territorial integrity of Russia. Putin said that the aim of all of this is the Yugoslavia model. When Yugoslavia was divided into Croatia, Serbia, Albania, Montenegro, that is the model. And there are people in the West like Madeleine Albright or Joschka Fischer who have been on the record saying Russia has much too many raw materials that we can allow it to keep them all to themselves. It's geopolitics. So I think that, we have to turn the United States back to become a republic. That's the only way. Because, if the whole world, if the whole BRICS and Europe and Asia, Africa, if all want to have peace and development and the United States want war, we will have war. Therefore, the centerpiece of our efforts is to change the United States from the inside. And we are doing similar meetings like today in the United States, in many cities, but we have especially launched now a very exciting project that is called the Manhattan Project, which is the idea that Alexander Hamilton unified the United States from New York and went into a credit system, a national bank, and that is what we have to do today, because the so-called state right, which is always associated with the Confederacy, the former slave owners and the British Empire, they want to have the state right, and we want to have one America. And right now, the big battle is this fight for the soul of the United States. Can we turn the United States back to be a republic as it was from the War of Independence? And how it was revived many times by John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams had the identical foreign policy like Xi Jinping. Identical. I can find you the speeches. And Lincoln, Franklin D. Roosevelt, even John F. Kennedy was a completely different paradigm like today. People have forgotten how different America was with John F. Kennedy. When John F. Kennedy came to Berlin and he said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," I was trying to make a fun recently at a speech in Manhattan where I said, in the tradition of Kennedy in Berlin, I speak to you as a New Yorker, which I thought was funny. But the problem was people didn't remember the Berlin speech. I realized that nobody reacted, and then I assumed that people would remember the speech by Kennedy, but they didn't. But that's what we do. We have to get every country back to its best tradition. Germany has to go back to the classics: Bach, Schiller, Beethoven, Schubert, Schumann, and many other more. And that is the treasure we have. It's just have been lost.
We are running out of time.
There's a number of young people here. Do you have a special message?
Yes, but just we have one more question. Huh?
Sorry, maybe I don't need it. It's a question about BRICS. The concept of BRICS was, as I know, as I've heard, originally developed by a journalist on the Wall Street Journal. He obviously meant something very different from what you mean. But it's a transformation. And my question is, have the BRICS, that's about 20 years ago, I guess, the concept was developed, has the BRIC countries developed, transformed into something different from what he meant at that time? Was he right, so to speak? What he was trying to say was, these are the countries you should speculate and invest in. This is the future for you investors. That's why he developed it. He had no other idea with it than saying this is a good deal, so to speak. So tell me just shortly, how have these countries developed since then?
Well, I mean, you have to remember that when we proposed this Eurasian land bridge, we already in 1994 proposed to all the Asian countries that they should conduct a conference about it, with inviting all the participating countries. And the only country which responded at that time was China. So in '96, they organized a very big conference in Beijing, which had the title, "The Eurasian Land Bridge and the Regions Along the Land Bridge." And there were 34 countries participating. I was one of the speakers. And at that time, the Chinese government's position was that the Eurasian land bridge is the Chinese long-term perspective until the year 2010. And they were building the railroad from China to Iran, to Mashhad. That was just a week after the big conference in Beijing. But then came the Asia crisis of '97. If you remember, we said at the time, this is not an Asia crisis, this is a global crisis. And you know, at that time you had George Soros, who speculated against Malaysia. In 1 week he brought down the currency 80%. Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, all these countries plunged. You know, it was a total slaughterhouse. And that is why the Eurasian land bridge was, in my view, interrupted, you know, because it really changed it. You had the Asia crisis in '97, you had the Russia GKO crisis, the Russian state bankruptcy in '98, you had the LTCM crisis, which was the largest hedge fund at the time, which went bankrupt. So, you know, then these countries, the so-called emerging countries, drew their own lesson by saying, okay, we have to have a pool of currency defense against speculative attacks. So at the beginning of the 2000s, they created the Chiang Mai Fund. You know, the Thai city in Chiang Mai gave the name to a fund. And that fund is also the reference point to the, I always forget this word, contingency
Reserve agreement.
Reserve contingency mechanism.
Contingency reserve
agreement, yeah. CRA, which is modeled on the Chiang Mai fund, and it's also $100 billion initial capital, and all participating countries will be defended against speculative attack like '97. This is part of this new economic system. But I think, you know, they have also gone through a long learning process by coming to the conclusion that the IMF, the World Bank, have no interest to give them development credits. You know, because whenever a third world country wanted to go to the World Bank or the IMF and say, we have the following infrastructure project which we would like to do, the IMF would say, no, you have to fulfill the following conditionalities, you have to cut your health cost, you have to cut your expenditure for your education, no infrastructure, no, that's not profitable. So, you know, the IMF conditionalities really strangulated these countries. And I think the real turning point, or this was all a long process of evolution, but the real turning point came when the United States stopped the quantitative easing. And you had a massive capital flight from the emerging countries back into the dollar, back into the euro. And then these countries realized, hey, wait a second, we have to speed up our self-defense. And that is when they started to move to have their own credit institutions like the AIIB, the New Development Bank, and all the other banks I mentioned earlier. Because they are very diplomatic. They say this is not a threat to the IMF, this is to complement the IMF. They can say it as they want. I mean, you know, in my view, they are the superior model because countries which participate in these instruments have benefits, and those countries which participate in financial institutions whose only interest is to defend bankrupt banks is a losing model. You know, because if you are making taxpayer money available for bailing out bankrupt banks, while if you are a Mittelstand firm in Germany, for example, and you go to a bank and you want to have a credit, you don't get it. You know, I mean, with all this money, with all this bailout, the industry is being tied out. the German industry has the same fate like the emerging market countries with the IMF. They don't get credit for real investment. If you want to speculate, you get all the money you want. And I think that system is just coming to an end. And on the question of the BRICS, I can only advise you, you do not have to believe me. I think the BRICS is a real, completely different universe. They are functioning on totally different principles, but you don't have to believe me. If you don't believe me, please do me one favor, go home and read the speeches of Xi Jinping, the speeches of Modi, and study what they say, and then look what they are doing, and look at the economic progress of these countries. And then you see for yourself. I think Goldman Sachs or whoever made that notion is probably very unhappy of having ever said that, because it turned exactly into the opposite of what it was intended.
That's how you start.
Huh?
That's how you start. Just make you really fixed in the beginning, thinking the right way.
So,
that's what's done.
The last question here.
I have a question. I don't need. The lady.
Yeah, can I just... My name is Joyce. I'm from China, one of the very happy Chinese you talk about. And I'm very happy to be here. And firstly, I want to say I really appreciated all of your compliment and especially your faith, your belief of Chinese and China's development. And I'm also very surprised you know so much about China. Probably even more than me myself, because I have never been to China in the Cultural Revolution. I was not even born. And also, the Schiller Institute gave me. I studied global development in the University of Copenhagen. The Schiller Institute gave me a different idea, different perspective of viewing the project New Silk Road. Before that, I was only thinking about it. Okay, how it's gonna drive in Chinese economic, how it will benefit us. But this time, I'm thinking maybe it's also more about the global humanity development way. But we have talked about this project for 2 years almost, and but it still stay in the concept level. I am not suspicious about Chinese efficiency, because we can build 3 subway lines in Beijing in 1 year, and how long have you taken to build the Norfolk stuff? But still, it's much more difficult than talk about it. The new developed investment bank have already got a lot of money, 100 billion level, I think. But when we talk about the basic infrastructure development, there's still a lot more to do. And also, it's not a non-profit project. It's a state-level political, economic project. This is much more difficult because the world is not going to accept this that easy. Obama won't like this idea. Otherwise, he will not establish the TPP, TIPP, and exclude China. So my question is, what do you think the rest of the world, especially Europe, can participate in this project? Do you have any concrete ideas of what steps can be followed, what policies can be established? What role can Europe play in this project? Thank you.
Well, I didn't say it was easy, you know. I mean, we are not at the verge of World War III for no reason, you know. As a matter of fact, I think when Obama made his State of the Union address, people were really shocked, because he said, you know, that the United States, first of all, Russia is just a regional power. China should not be allowed to dominate trade relations in Asia. but that the United States still has world leadership. So he still said the world is a unipolar world and we are the masters of that world. But then the Chinese and the Russian government were extremely clear in rejecting that. You know, Russia said, we do not accept to be ruled by the United States. We can cooperate with the United States but on an equal level. The Chinese said something similar. They said, we are no longer in a unipolar world. We reject the idea that the United States is the world leadership. So, you know, but I think this Obama speech made it also very clear, you know, that he is still on the idea to be a world, the only world superpower, that he will run everything. But, you know, I think that this empire is crumbling. It's crumbling very quickly, and, you know, I think that the collapse of the Wall Street and the collapse of the European banks is upon us. You know, I mean, don't think that this is a sign of strength that the Swiss decoupled the pegging to the euro. This was a self-defense mechanism. The fact that the Danish are now decoupling from this mechanism of the EZB buying state bonds is a self-protection mechanism. And these are the signs of a disintegration of the rule. Because the EU, no matter what they do, if they are playing a hard line with Greece, they drive Greece out of the euro. If they soften the conditions but stay within the same system, then the Spain, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, they will all want to soften the condition. Then that's the end of the euro that way. And, you know, either way, this system is coming to an end. So what we are trying to do, and I didn't say it was easy at all, I think it's very difficult, but, you know, so what, you know, I mean, it's our world, you know, it's the only one we have, so we better save it, you know. What? Better than war anyway. Yeah, exactly. So what we are trying to do is, you know, I mean, look, this Greece development, I think, is very promising because, you know, if Greece is pushed too hard by Brussels, they will go to Russia and China, and I'm sure of it. Because that is available, they know about it, they have strong ties of friendship already, you know, and then that will be an example where other countries will say, hey, wait a second, we do the same thing. I agree with the gentleman before, you know, that this does not need to be a conflict, that if the EU would transform and then form an alliance with the Eurasian Economic Union, and they all agree on the World Land Bridge as the basis, that is the best and only way how to get peace to Ukraine. Because Ukraine is, in the West, Catholic, in the East, communist and Orthodox, and the only way how you can stop this is by having the World Land Bridge, you know, becoming the basis for the unification or unity of Ukraine. And we need the World Land Bridge as a peace policy. And I think the best thing we can do is, you know, create a mass movement for the new Silk Road. Because the more people know about the possibility, for example, take Germany. Germany needs export markets. Germany has a lot of technology which is very much still in demand, not much longer if they keep doing what they're doing, but it's still there. So it would be much in the interest of Germany to cooperate in the development of the Arctic regions of Siberia, in greening the deserts in the Middle East, in helping to develop Africa. That would be German interest. And I think for Denmark it's very similar. You know, Denmark needs to have ties, to have a future. So I think the best thing we can do, and that's why I asked your help from the very beginning, help to spread the idea. Because it's not known. Our biggest problem is that the mass media are not talking about this, you know. So therefore we have to create a mouth-to-mouth propaganda, you know, take the petition, you know, get more people to sign it, both just normal people, people who have no special, who are just individuals or individual universes or universal entities or whatever, get millions of those people. But also help us to look out so-called VIPs, and industry associations, trade unions, diplomats, retired military, people who are concerned about the war danger, just everybody, and help us to make a mass movement of people who say, we want not war, we want to cooperate in a new paradigm of civilization. And I think this is an idea which can really catch fire. Because I have said it many times in the past, when you don't have reason, and you can therefore not appeal to reason because there is no, then the last resort is to put a little fire under the behind, and then people start to move. And I don't have to put this fire on. The fire is already on. The war danger is the fire. And people who want to fight the war danger, they better move their behind now, And I think we can, I have seen that when you present it to people, they are happy about it. Because, many people are not convinced that this culture is any good. For example, I have now had a couple of events where at the end of the meeting always came up the question of the popular culture, the youth culture, the violence in the movies, the video games, and in the United States, this has reached a point, which is unbelievable. You all hear about shootings in the supermarket. In Washington, you have every day 2, 3, 4 people shot dead, arbitrary shootings. I'm trying not to go out too much to malls or any public place because it's dangerous. Just accidental killings. If you look in Germany, you have in Germany we used to have beautiful movies in the past, like Spukschloss im Spessart. I don't know if you ever heard of it. There were movies which had a plot, a story, which were funny, and you could laugh or be emotionally upset, but it had a story. Now you have a krimi every day, 2, 3, 4 krimis, Tatort, Soko, and what is the content? It doesn't have a plot, it has violence. Violence for no good reason. You see the blood jumping out of the mouth, it's awful. No, it has no meaning other than brutalizing the people, making them worse by looking this. And why? Because the oligarchy needs depraved people to control them. If the people are brutalized and degenerate, it's easier to control them. If everybody is a genius, the oligarchy has a problem. There is no danger of this right now, I can assure you. But that was the idea of Wilhelm von Humboldt, that every child should become a genius. And that is what we need. We need every child to have a universal education, to learn classical art, to learn beautiful singing, instrument, science, and if we would have that, and that is what the BRICS are doing. China is becoming a science-based economy. They're putting a lot more emphasis on high education than the West. That is the case. And, India also. India is now doing what we discussed 40 years ago or 30 years ago with Indira Gandhi. That every child must have a universal education and then you can overcome the underdevelopment. India is now moving exactly in this direction. So I want you to join a movement for beauty and for development.
And practically that means before you leave, you sign up out there, so we are in touch with you, so you can come to the meetings, so you also can take literature with you to distribute, and
it means also that the Schiller Institute is playing a crucial role in this whole international movement. And there are many people here who are not yet members of the Schiller Institute, which enables you to get our literature and enables you to give money. That's really great. So those who are not members, please become members on the way out. Those who are members, please give an extra contribution for helping to organize this meeting and to organize the next meeting. And go out from here and multiply.
Go out, subdue the world, and multiply.
And we want to thank so much Helga for coming here. And
let me just say one last. I would like you to replicate the Manhattan Project in Copenhagen, which is do outreach. We want to have a similar, bigger meeting than today in 4 or 6 weeks. And if each of you brings 1 or more persons, I think we can really do a gigantic, snowballing of this effort. So, bring your friends, your family, your children, your daughter, your wife, your uncle, your colleagues, and.
Do you have a special message to the young people here today?
Well, I think if you are young right now, you better make sure you have a future. Right now that is not guaranteed. And I think if you are a young person, I think I would really think the future world is yours, and you have all the right to change the things which are not right today. Because it's you who will be here when we are gone. So, it's you. It's you who has to decide. And you have to, I think the good thing about young people is that, when they not yet have sold out, like only thinking about money, career, young people tend to be more moral and more idealistic. And that is a big value, because I think that the youth right now, if they would really know what is in store for them, they would all be up in arms. And the problem is many don't know it. So help us to spread the situation and, make a youth movement for beauty. I think this is as important as the Silk Road, because if you don't have going back to beauty in the culture, I don't know if it's worth living in a world which is dominated by the present popular culture. Pop music is largely satanic. If you look at what these pop songs in part, the message, the image of man which they portray, it is, I happen in that point to agree with both Putin and the Pope.